right, folks, here we are. You're listening to What's Working with Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions, and we are going to give you good insight and good advice to keep your small business alive and floating and going forward, and I want to say even more successful regardless of the COVID economy. But the first piece of insight and advice that I'm going to give you that I know is going to change your day is this: avoid McGregor Road. Avoid McGregor Road. I think I sat 7 minutes at the light just a little while ago. There's sweat on my forehead trying to get in here on time. Avoid McGregor Road, and your life, your day will be much better. The other thing I'm going to tell you is that Pullman's is offering $6 brownies today. A dozen brownies for $6 today, $6 Brownie Tuesday, and that's well worth mentioning. Now, back to work. Coming up on today's show, we are lucky to get this guy, Brian Hamilton, on the show. He has scheduling has been a challenge. He's a busy man. I'm going to give you his bio when we introduce him after the first break. But he sold his stake in a company that he co-founded in 1998 called SageWorks. They were at the time the country's largest financial tech company, providing software to banks all over the United States. And he has put his proceeds from that sale into the Brian Hamilton Foundation. They work with organizations to increase entrepreneurship. And I'm asking him today, is now the COVID economy a suitable time to begin a new business? And I'm going to have, my suspicion is his answer is going to be yes. I'm going to ask him to defend that answer. Additionally, he put out an article in Inc. magazine not long ago that reads the following. It's titled, 6 Actions to Take in the Next 90 Days to Save Your Business. Many of the actions in this article are things that we've heard from guests previously, but he elaborates on them a little bit differently, and I'm going to ask him to talk about some of these things, particularly one, pivot your product or service to the new conditions. We hear this word pivot a lot in the business community today. I want him to elaborate on that a little bit. So we'll have him on here, and he is offering some special stuff for us that you'll get at the text line, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. After that, I'm bringing back a recent guest, which is kind of taboo in what it is that I do to have a recent guest back in a short period of time. But David Zock is my Futurist friend out of Milwaukee, and he and I have had some wonderful conversations about where we think business is going, particularly where he sees it. And he's going to go about it this way. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Yeah, what are we talking about? Well, what are the truths in business? What are the truths that we can count on after the COVID economy is amended, let's say? What can we count on? What are the enduring principles of business that won't change? If you'll recall, David talked about facts, trends, and principles. These are the principles, and we're going to ask him to elaborate on those a little bit more to give us some ideas on how to build and grow our business in this COVID economy. Don't forget, at 1:52 p.m., we do the summary of the show, the highlights that notes that I've taken during the show, the things that I want to remember, the things that I want you to remember going forward. And the final element of each show on Tuesday and Thursday is our motivational and inspirational guy. And I've got one of my favorite. His name is Matt Armbruster from Ransom Ministries. We've had him on this show. They do some electronics recycling work. They do a lot of things, but that's the thing that I'm most familiar with. And he's going to close this out with some energy and some momentum. Now, if you heard last week's show, cigarclub.com is still offering their discount at the text service. And here's how to get that discount, as well as David's information, David Zock and Brian Hamilton. Text What's Working to 44222. There are no apostrophes, no spaces, and no caps in What's Working. What's Working to 44222, and you'll get that list. And I want to finish our opening segment here with a teaser, and that teaser is for Thursday. I used all my social capital, all of it, and it ain't much. But I got us an epidemiologist coming on Thursday. She's from the Tulane School of Tropical Medicine. I called and said I went to school there and I'd like somebody, and they said, we'll give you someone if you promise to never say that again. And I got her. She'll be on Thursday. When we come back, Brian Hamilton of the Brian Hamilton Foundation. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. I'm Cam Marston. I've got Brian Hamilton on the line, and I'll introduce him in a moment. I want to give you a little bit about his bio, and this is something that I had to highlight as I began reading it this morning. Brian ran a landscaping business to pay for his undergraduate degree. Brian, when we get you on, I think you're the third or fourth guy we've had on now that has a landscaping business in their background that got him into something else. We rarely have people with landscaping in their background that are still doing landscaping. He went to Sacred Heart. He's got an MBA from Duke, co-founded SageWorks in 1998, sold it to a private equity firm, multiple patents in the process, regular guest on CNBC and Fox, awards from Duke, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, George Bush, Points of Light, and started the Brian Hamilton Foundation. Brian, lastly, he enjoys spending time with his two sons, fishing and hanging out with his little brother, Ryan, and, of course, his two dogs, Sean and Stacy. You don't bother to name your sons, but you will name your dogs. Gotta love that.
Well, listen, I hold the dog in much higher esteem than my son. So.
Those dogs still have potential, don't they? Those dogs can still be trained.
Yeah, they can be, and they also like you.
Yes. They like you regardless of what you do. Brian, thank you so much for your willingness to come on the show. I know your schedule. I know how hard it's been to get you on, and I appreciate the time that you're going to spend with us. Are you calling from the Charlotte area?
I'm calling from the Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina.
That's great.
Yeah.
My in-laws live up there in Raleigh-Durham. Anyway, welcome to the show, and I want to talk to you to begin about this article that you wrote for Inc. magazine, 6 actions to take in the next 90 days to save your business. A number of the things that you listed here, we've heard in some form or another as we've interviewed different business experts over the past, I guess it's been about 2 months. One of the things that I want to bring to your attention and ask you to expand upon is the final line in step number 1. Step number 1 reads, vigorously control what you can, vigorously ignore what you can't control. And the final line in that paragraph reads, by the way, this might start with not obsessively watching the news. Explain that for me.
Well, except for your show. Come on.
Except for my show.
Well, actually, I've just, I've worked with business owners in one form or the other, Cam, for most of my life. And, every time I watch the news, I want to take a nap. I mean, it's unbelievable. I literally don't watch anymore because everything is so negative. I mean, I guess that's the business they're in. I got, to report on that stuff. And maybe in a salacious way, we're more interested in that. But as a business owner right now, dealing with a lot of fish to fry, stay away from the news. My goodness, it's terrible. And we all get lured into it. We all get lured into it. I understand that. But that's one of the things you don't have to do is subject yourself to a bunch of negativity. That's not going to help you run your business better.
So I think a counter argument could say the news has given us an indication of what's going on with the economy, what we can expect perhaps for our business, what's going on with the banks and the PPP loans and things of that nature. So the news is relevant. Now, I had another friend of mine yesterday in Seattle that I spoke to who says he glances the headlines only, and they're all kind of the same right now. They're all bad news, but he keeps up with the headlines. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I don't mean it literally. I mean, I stay on top of the market and what's going on, and the objective stuff, the economic reports. You have to obviously be part of society, but I think that there's a tendency to dive in too much, and you get into a lot of speculation. For example, what's the stock market going to do? What's the economy going to do? I'm supposed to be one of these talking heads who knows all this thing. I'm telling you, there is nobody in the country who knows that right now. So for all the small business owners out there, my heart goes out to them. It is true, by the way, I did run a landscaping business in high school and college, but even when I got out of grad school at Duke, I ran a coin laundromat, and then eventually, of course, I started a software company. But I ran a laundromat in my 20s, and my heart goes out to the Main Street businesses. I don't think Congress realizes this, but you take the average Main Street business, the average small business, 26 million people in the country, they basically got 2 weeks of working capital.
Yeah.
And I don't think they realize it. You can't go 2 months, never mind. You can't go 2 weeks, never mind 2 months. So my heart is going out to them. And do they benefit from watching the news and dwelling on it? I would say absolutely not. They got to focus on their businesses and, frankly, survival right now. So, you got to be informed. You got to be part of society. But do you have to be immersed in it? I would say absolutely not. I know I'm not.
Yeah. I can't help but comment on the non-traditional path you've taken, that you went from landscaping to Sacred Heart to Duke MBA to laundromat, not what I would expect out of Duke. However, my wife is a Carolina grad, and she thinks that probably makes complete sense as a Carolina grad. Can you comment on this non-traditional path? Because I know there are people like now, and I'm raising my hand right now, Brian. I'm this guy. I began this radio program when my calendar evaporated in mid-March, and I called Sean Sullivan and said, hey, I think I can help small business because everything I've planned to do in the spring is gone. My clients have canceled everything. So I sit here wondering if my career is going to come back to what it used to be, and trying to be open and objective to opportunities that may land at my feet. You have to have had a similar experience if you went from laundromat to software company. Tell me about the thinking that got you from one place to the next.
Yeah, thank you, by the way. Well, first of all, I'll comment on this first. We're allowed to have fun, right? We need some fun these days, but I guess it's because I'm weird. I remember my father was a Marine. He didn't graduate from high school. And I was the first person in my family even to go to any college, just for perspective. And when I got out of Duke and I went into laundromats, he was like, what the heck are you doing? So I don't know why I did it. I think I really just wanted to become an entrepreneur. I didn't have a lot of capital. I didn't have that. But on your second point, I think is more important, which is, look, I remember even at SageWorks, Cam, I was running, technology company 10 years ago in 2008 or whatever, 12 years ago. And we went we went metaphorically from generating $100 a month in sales to like 10 during the financial crisis. And it was that steep, and it happened immediately. And I've been through at least 10 near-death experiences as a business owner, at least. And I know what it's like to have borrowed millions of dollars and have no way to pay it back. And now all of a sudden you get a lot of these Main Street businesses. These are the people that make America. America is not made by people like me. America is not made by tech people. America is made by people who are running the ball up the middle and providing the services that we desperately need every day. And now all of a sudden some of their revenue has been cut 50, 60, 70%. Suppose you're a salon owner, right? The hair people, the hair salons. Well, your revenue's cut by 100%. Yeah. What are these people doing? It's really dangerous right now.
Yeah. Well, tell me I want you to prescribe the mindset for this middle America of how to be open to an opportunity that may look non-traditional. So let's take laundromat. If you've been in laundromat and that's been your success thus far, then you likely have a filter through which you see the world, and it's all based on growing or building your laundromat. But there could be some left field thing that comes through the window that you need to turn and look at. Now, one of the points that you have in your Inc. article is pivot your product or service to a new condition. I'm talking about pivoting your business, not just product or service, but the opportunity. How do you evaluate those types of things?
Well, it's a good question. I haven't thought about it in years, but to be clear, I always knew I wanted to try sort of the big thing, which of course, in my 30s, I started a tech company that I ran for 20 years, and I sold that 2 years ago. But I didn't have this thing called capital. I didn't have this thing called cash. So I ran a laundromat in order to generate enough cash to start SageWorks, which was a financial technology company. And I always joked around about it, but SageWorks was started with coin laundromat money. It's really true. Everybody has their own journey. We all have our own journey. I think that the reason people, I don't know, I speak for me, but the reason people start businesses is because they want this thing called freedom. They want control over their daily life and what they're doing. They want to be able to create. That's why people start businesses. They don't start out of greed. They don't start because they want to become billionaires. They want freedom. And I think if you can manifest that freedom in some business you can start that you love to do, whether it's baking cookies or whether it's cutting lawns or whether it's financial technology, then all the power to you. But I always look for opportunities. Where's the market opportunity? What can we do today? What can we do as people to manifest our real dream, which is to get freedom and maybe generate some wealth along the way?
So I can't imagine that one of your Duke MBA professors would say in the early indications of a recession and perhaps a depression is the time to start a business. I know you're a fan of entrepreneurship, having looked at your website. And folks, I'm going to tell you about Starter U just prior to coming to a close on this segment. What is your opinion about starting a business now? Is it or would you advise someone, hey, man, you just need to sit on the sidelines, or no, now's the time? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and this is what I would say to that. I'm trying to unwind that excellent question. I would say it depends on the industry. Would I want you starting a coffee shop on a main street right now? I'd say probably not. But now would be a good time to start thinking about a business you could start. Think about an angle. Maybe it's education, for example. Maybe it's tutoring. How about mobile tire repair? Maybe there's some business that's not going to be affected by society as it is right now. So now's a good time to think. It may be a good time to launch a business, depending upon someone's particular circumstances. I would say, though, I think we really need to be very honest with people. If you're in a business that's requiring a lot of people being close together and that, boy, Cam, I was thinking about what would I do if I had a laundromat right now? And when I say a laundromat, I mean a coin laundromat. And all of a sudden they're saying to me, hey, you can open up at 50% capacity. What the politicians don't understand is that I would have lost more money at a 50% capacity than being closed. You can't open up my laundromat and have people 6 feet apart. That means I can only use one out of every 3 dryers. So in that type of situation, and those are the kinds of business I'd be really hesitant to start right now. But if you're an entrepreneur and you're creative, there's always an angle on something you can do either now or when we get out of this mess.
What is something, Brian, that you wish you could have done over again, looking in the past? I wish I would have done this differently.
Yeah, that's a good. Wow, you're stumping me here on national radio. I would say
this is intergalactic radio.
Yeah, well, you know what? We're here to help the people, which is fine by me. I would say this to you. I would say the one thing that I wish, which I hadn't thought about till you asked it, is I wish that I had more mentors. I wish I listened more. I wish I tapped into the reservoir, and there is a reservoir, a big reservoir, as big as the state of Arizona. There's a reservoir of water of people who can help guide you and give you advice. I was too strong-headed when I was in my 20s. I thought I knew everything. I was arrogant, and I didn't listen enough. And I wish I got more mentorship and help from people who know what they're doing. I really, that would have saved me 15 years of hardship.
Yeah. Now there are people listening in this audience that are everybody I talk, not everybody, so many of the people that I talk to have an entrepreneur's dream, and you offer something which is really appealing to me called Starter U on your website. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, and I appreciate that. By the way, I got Charlie Bradley, who you know is our newly appointed CEO of the foundation. He's sitting here. He's always like, Brian, you got to promote what we do, and I'm like, okay, so that's a great question. Starter U, which is available at brianhamilton.org. is an 8-hour course that was developed and produced and narrated by real entrepreneurs. By the way, not just the fancy people like me, not the fancy tech people, but people who run construction businesses and lawn services and some tech people. But it's an 8-hour course from soup to nuts that is very, very practical. This is not just about business plans. It's about the step-by-step, how can you start your own little small business, taught by practitioners in very plain language. We teach people how to fish, how to throw the bobber out, how to put the worm on the hook, when the bobber goes under, how to reel in the fish, and it's very specific. So it's 8 hours, very plain language, but I have to say I don't like the word proud. That's the wrong word, but I can't think of a better one. I'm happy to have developed that because we've gotten great reviews on that course because, to our knowledge, it's the only practical guide out there of how to start a business when you know nothing. And so that's Starter U, and it's free, by the way. Everything we do is totally free. We're not government funded. We don't, we just, we give this stuff away for free because we've been blessed enough to have some resources to be able to give back.
Folks, if you want a link to Starter U, and I'll ask you to say it again, Brian, but you can text What's Working to 44222. I found it this morning. I created the link. I put it in the text service. Text What's Working to 44222. I've seen it. It's well done. It's well done. And you'd think that something that's free, you maybe look out of the corner of your eye. It's well done, and it's a beautiful gift that you're offering to people. If you've got that entrepreneur urge, now may be the time to begin thinking about it. And Starter U will be a great way to begin. Brian, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And for all the small business owners out there, for any of you, my heart really goes out to you. I've been there, had a couple of bullets like shaved my head, a couple of near-death experiences, and God bless you. And just keep working, keep your head up, try to be positive, control what you can control, and if you can't control something, try to ignore it. My heart goes out to you. I know it's a tough time.
Thank you, Brian. You're listening to What's Working, brought to you by Regions. I'm Cam Marston. We'll be right back after this break. This is What's Working with Cam Marston, brought to you by Regions. I am he. And on the line, I got Dave Zock. Dave Zock lives in a suburban of Chicago, Chicago suburban called, what is the word I'm looking for here, Dave?
I think it's called Milwaukee, maybe?
Yeah, but it's a neighborhood of Chicago.
Right. Where's this conversation going, pal?
A lot of Milwaukeeans have a lot of pride about their town, and they don't like people telling them that it's suburbia Chicago. So, Dave, last time you were on the phone, you were talking to us a little bit about the enduring principles. We talked fads, trends, and principles, and enduring principles, things that don't change. And I thought there was so much content there. It's a way to get us thinking about the business principles that aren't changing. So much of the news today is we don't know what the new normal will be. It's going to look maybe a little bit like this, maybe a little bit like that, whatever. It won't be back to the way it's supposed to be, whatever. We could go on forever about these predictions, but there are some things that remain unchanged. Let's talk about those things and how we come up with them as business owners. I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, think about how people say that change is the only constant, that everything changes, that nothing is permanent. And if that were true, then it would mean that we have learned nothing. I mean, it just is absurd to say everything changes. Everything is changeable, but we stand upon things. We say, this is true. And so, when thinking about the notion of eternals or permanent or principles, I believe there was a document that began with the words, we hold these truths to be self-evident. And, take that to your, when you think about your business, what do you hold to be true? How would you finish that sentence? Say, this is true about my business. This is true about my family, my life, my community. I mean, it stretches across all those boundaries. What do you hold to be true? And it's important to also realize that these are, like fads and trends, they come and go, but principles ebb and flow. So they're always true, but one may be more important than another, early on. So like, two principles we hold on to, freedom and equality. Now, they're essentially opposites. But if I were to ask you, Cam, which is more important to you, freedom or equality? What would you say?
I can't make a decision. They're both important.
Yeah, but which?
I like freedom more. I'm a freedom guy. I come down on team freedom.
Yeah, and same here. And most of my audience members react that way as well. They pick freedom. And the reason is because freedom has been very, very good to them.
Yeah.
Think about who it might not be, who might choose equality because maybe freedom hasn't been good. But so with these principles, they have to interact with each other. They have to kind of dance.
Well, let's step back a little bit. The principles that you're talking about, of what are unchanging principles. You've made a good point. Change is constant. No, that's not true. There are principles that remain fixed one of which, let's take it into the world of my listeners, the small business owner.
Sure.
What is a fixed principle? One could be customer service must always, good customer service always matters. Bad customer service leads to customer turnover. How is this kind of what you're thinking about here? Or is it even more fundamental than that, in that people want to be respected as an individual? How does that show up in customer service?
Well, when you talk about all those things, at some level, it's sort of a sense of honesty. Are you honest with your customers? So when you're communicating, when you're dealing with them, can you be trusted? And do you ever hear the expression that you lie to be believed right now, you tell the truth in order to be believed in the future?
I see.
So, we constantly are tempted to be sort of compromise these principles just because we think we can get an advantage. And, it is, we're flawed, imperfect creatures. We struggle with these things sometimes, but they do come back to haunt you. And so, what is it, if you think about if your business has been around for, say, 5 years, 10 years, 50, 100 years, what is it about that business that should never, ever change so it can still be here 10, 15, 20, or 100 years from now?
And those are the principles with which my listeners should build their business or continue to build their business. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a filter, Dave, through which people can ask themselves these questions? I mean, these are esoteric questions that you can sit and drink coffee and think forever about. But do you offer a filter, a way of thinking about it? In a let's say it may perhaps even this is putting you on the spot, but a numerated way. First question, ask yourself this. Second question, ask yourself this. That'll help people kind of get through what the principles of their business are.
Principles are based on either fact or faith. I know this to be true, or I believe this to be true. And it is the interaction of those two things in the notion of faith and reason. That you have to, you can believe something, but can you explain it to somebody else?
Yeah.
And I heard a great notion that in order to really know something, you spend half your time trying to learn it, and then half your time trying to explain it to others.
Yeah.
So that you truly have to understand it. And that's how we build these things into ourselves.
Yeah. It's a Zen statement that I've heard. If you want to learn something, be its teacher. And similar expression there. Now, one of the things that you and I have talked about that I think is kind of tangential to this conversation on principles and questions that we should ask ourselves about our business and what it is that we do for our customer is seeking truths versus clicks. Expand on that for me, if you will.
I'm not sure.
The truth is the click is the quick hit. It's what do I need to say? It's an instant gratification that too often, and I'm guilty of this, in order to get attention online in a very attention-distracted world, we put out things that we want people to click on versus giving some principle-oriented information that's relevant to our business.
Well, one of the things I tell people, audiences, that in order to find truth, one of the things one of the ways you can get it is by reading books as opposed to clicking on something. That the articles are produced to produce those clicks to get and keep feeding one after the other. But there's not always a lot of thought that goes into those things. One of the things I like about books is somebody has thought about them over time. They've had to be edited. They've had to really do research to pull these ideas together. And so, it's that notion of, I'm not sure if we mentioned this last time, is that in these times, look for old as much as news. What stood the test of time? Look for precedent. You can find it in books. You can find it in faith. You can find it in community.
Yeah. And these are the enduring principles that we refer to. Now, one of the questions that I know my listeners have or concerns they have is with employees and ways to get on March the 5th, let's say, something like this. You'll find this perhaps interesting. And I don't know whether I've told you this or not, Dave, but on March the 5th, I was working with a client in Eastern North Carolina and coming up with new, non-traditional ways to find new employees. They were hurting for new people. Mm-hmm. On March the 10th, they laid off a good bit of their workforce and canceled my contract. It was like, gosh, that was 5 days the pendulum swung so far the opposite way. Nevertheless, what businesses continue to look for is ways to get and keep people. And one of the things that you've mentioned to me in conversations past is skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So elaborate on that and what it means for businesses and managers and hires and owners out there in thinking about putting yourself in the employee's place and visioning yourself with skin in the game.
So it's taken from a book by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, Skin in the Game, and it's about the impact of decisions. And quite often, there have an awful lot of decisions that are made today where the people making the decisions, it doesn't impact them. It's for others. And the phrase that I think Taleb had was, a lot of decisions are made with, how's it go? Darn it. Heads I win, tails you lose.
Right. I'm familiar with that expression.
That any decision that you're going to make with your employees, does it also affect you? Or is it just being completely outsourced?
Yeah. So we've become a society that is, and I love the way you say this, making decisions that really don't have an impact on me. We're making decisions for other people. And in the role of the employer, of a manager, a leader, a supervisor, whatever the term may be, being able to put yourself in their shoes and perhaps even have some skin in the game of the decision yourself makes you more empathetic to that individual and, in turn, let's hope, builds a more loyal and hardworking and dedicated and customer-focused workforce.
Well, any boss, any manager should be able to also do those tasks that they're assigning to others. And I think the future is going to be won or lost by whether or not people are going to be willing to get dirt under their fingernails.
Yeah.
And if you're only going to assign it to others, if you're only going to push it away, do you know what's actually going on out there? Shakespeare has this great line about the eyes of the ignorant are a lot more sophisticated than their ears.
Uh-huh.
So you can say all these words, but if they see you acting in a way contrary to those things,
yes,
they're not going to trust you.
I like that. The future will be won by people willing to get dirt under their fingernails, and it means get down there grubby with the people that are providing the service to the customers. Know exactly what it is they're going through.
Yeah, you don't have to be there all the time, because you may have skills that are better placed elsewhere.
Yeah.
But to think that some work is beneath you, it's just such a horrible thing, horrible way to go through life.
Folks, Dave Zock is a futurist. He's a friend of mine. He makes me think hard every time that I talk with him. His website has a number of wonderful videos in there, and one of the pages that I like is Think Like a Futurist, and I've put that in the text link. What's working? Text What's Working to 44222. You can click on it, and he'll teach you how to think this way, and there's great value in these deep questions and the way you look at your business, you value your customers, and you treat your employees. Dave, good to talk to you again, my friend. We'll have you back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. We'll be back with our summary and Matt Armbruster. All right, folks, let's work on wrapping up today's show. We had Brian Hamilton on the first segment here. I took 4 notes from Brian that stood out to me. Number 1, avoid the news. And that sounds odd coming from a station that provides a lot of news, but avoid the news. Let's be careful about too much of what we take in. And in fact, there have been quite a few people that have said something like that in the past, one of which said you got to set your mind right and then read the news, because otherwise it'll pollute your the rest of the day. And that's certainly the case for me. I surprised him with the question, what would you change? And his answer, more mentors. He needs more advisors and more advice. He needed it in a younger age when he was in his 20s. To use my terminology, not his own, he was bulletproof and beer was food, and he was not interested in what people could teach him looking back, lessons were missed that perhaps would have shortened his learning curve. And I'm raising my hand again. That's something that I could have used and still realize I could use today. We talked a little bit about Starter U, and I can get you that link. If you text What's Working to 44222, we'll get you the link to Starter U. It's free. It's 8 hours of how to begin your own business. It's catered to people who have an entrepreneur bent in their bones and are looking to do something for themselves. And begin right now to start thinking about what you may want to do when the COVID economy finally releases us. We then talked to David Zock. He said two things that I loved. First, eternal truths. What are the truths about your business that are not trend-oriented or fad-oriented that will last into the future, not just to the horizon, but beyond the horizon? It has a lot to do with the needs of people, not just what you provide, but the needs of people. And secondly, skin in the game. As a decision maker, you need to make sure you have skin in the game. We have a society today full of people who can make decisions with no skin in the game. But for you to do your best for your people and your customers, put some skin in the game in each of the decisions that you make, and it will be much more authentic and beneficial to you down the road. Now, on the line with me is my great amigo, Matt Armbruster. Matt, thank you so much for giving us your time. Welcome back to What's Working.
Man, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that you do, and I love your expression that I've used many times. He'll take anything with a cord. Matt runs Ransom Ministries. Tell us briefly about Ransom Ministries, Matt, and then give us some inspiration.
We offer a job training, life skill training for guys coming out of prison, ladies coming out of prison, addiction, homelessness. We try to get them skills so that they can be successful in the job market, and we do that through recycling old electronics.
Yeah. All right. What do you see in the future, Matt? We all need a boost. We all need a little motivation and inspiration. Give me some.
Man, this whole time through all this COVID stuff and all that, I've just always had a motto of stepping outside the boat. And when you step outside the boat, which is what we've been all going through, it's a time of turmoil and structure. It's always a lot calmer when you're in the boat, but when you try to step out and do things that are a little different and things are changed, a lot of times if we focus on the change, a lot of times we will sink. For lack of a better word, I'm a faith-based organization, so I go to the Bible a lot for my leadership and for things to look at. And there's a story about Peter stepping out of the boat. When he stepped out, he could walk on water until he took his eyes off of the main thing, which was Jesus. And when he did that, he sunk. And that's kind of where, if we take our eyes off of what we're trying to do here in our lives and get so caught up in the storms around us, a lot of times we just get petrified or we freeze. I've just learned through this time is to look at the good things. I'm looking at times I get to spend with my kids more, families are eating dinner more. So we got to start looking at the positive parts of all this. And that's always been my way of dealing with things, and say, hey, you know what? I could really focus on the bad and the storms going on around me, but really I'm just going to start focusing on the things that are true and the things that are going to build my faith instead of tear it down. So that's kind of what I have now, and I try to tell everybody I talk to is, hey, let's not concentrate on the storms around us. Let's concentrate on the one, the Creator, and let's walk by faith and know that, hey, we're going to come out of this good. And that's why I try to tell my the guys that are in my program is, we're just taking it a day at a time, and we're just going to move forward.
Yep.
And good things are going to come out of it. We just have to look for them. And that's kind of my thoughts on things, and hopefully that encourages someone. I know it's easier said than done, but I know the alternative to not looking at that and keeping our eyes on the storm, we're going to sink.
I love it.
That's what we have to stay away from.
Step outside the boat. That's the title of your book, isn't it, my brother?
Yeah, that's kind of what, kind of made me write that book was by my life and how things went through in my life. And, and there's stories in there about it and
Folks,
how I
I've
learned
read
from those storms how to be a better person, how to conquer things better, and how to move forward when things got tough.
I've read Matt's book. It's well worth your time. Step outside the boat. Matt, beautiful stuff, my friend. Thank you so much. Folks, you're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Thursday, epidemiologist. Send me your questions for her, and we'll have a great show lined up. Have a good week, everybody.